Our guest tonight is former X Division champion DJZ. How you doing tonight, man?
I'm doing well. Thank y'all for having me. Salute to everybody tuning in.
We appreciate it, man. Listen, Impact Wrestling can be seen every Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time on Destination America. And while you are one of the best parts of the show each week, you're not featured in a match this week, unfortunately. Instead, Jesse Goddard and Robbie E. will be battling again. As a former member of the Bromans, do you feel it was the right time to break up the tag team? And now what's next for you moving forward?
I think there was definitely potential in the Bromans as like a babyface act, but at the same time, we accomplished a lot as a team last year, and I think it's time that we go our separate ways and prove to the world what we can do as singles competitors. There's always time, to maybe reunite the Bromans down the line, but let's focus on our individual selves. And I don't know about you guys, but did you watch the Robbie and Jesse match from Slammiversary?
Yeah, and the previous match before where Jesse unfortunately lost 3 times in just a matter of moments.
The match at Slammiversary I thought was real intense, and I'd imagine quite the same from the street fight.
Mike Chiari?
Yeah, well, you're a former X Division champion and one of the best wrestlers the X Division has to offer currently. But I think it can be argued that maybe there isn't as much emphasis on the X Division right now as there used to be. So for you, how do you view the current state of TNA's X Division, and what do you think that you can do? What do you think that can be done overall to help bring it back to prominence?
Well, if you saw Slammiversary, you saw myself, Tigre Uno, and Manic open the show in an X Division three-way that was given pretty significant amount of time, and a lot of people seemed to enjoy that match. And I hope it was like kind of a sign of things to come. Like maybe they'll give the X Division more time now that they see the quality that we can produce when given the time. So I think the X Division's got like a bright future. It's a really young X Division right now. Like there aren't a lot of veterans in the X Division at the moment. And in fact, like guys like me, Kenny King, Spud, we seem to be the vets of the X Division, and we're still like in our 20s. So it's pretty crazy. But I think it's time, man. And now that I'm a babyface and I get to show a different side of DJZ, because I've never really been a babyface since being in TNA. Never had that run. And as a heel all these years, I held back a lot of the high-flying maneuvers that I can do. So every time I go out there, now that I'm a babyface, now that I'm in the X Division on my own, just know that I'm going to go out of control trying to bring the X Division back to the prominence and buzz that it once had.
BG?
For fans who may not be aware, a couple of years ago you had a health scare. How are you feeling now, and did that impact your outlook on getting back into the ring?
It was just crazy because I wasn't sure for about 5 or 6 months whether or not I had cancer. So when you're alone with your thoughts, when you're unsure, it's scary, It definitely changes your perspective and changes your outlook on life, because I wasn't sure how much longer I had to live. I thought, okay, well, if I have cancer, I've probably only got like a year or two, and then I'm probably going to die. And it definitely impacted me in many ways, within wrestling and outside of it too, because I thought to myself, all right, what do I want to accomplish while I'm still alive? Music was a big thing that I really wanted to learn and get good at. So I took a lot of time when I was on the injured list, took a lot of time really diving into that passion and trying to learn it, because I didn't know how much longer I had to live. I remember having a maxed out credit card, nearly maxed out credit card, telling myself, you know what, let's just buy some music production software. Didn't have the money to do it, just maxed out my credit card completely, bought the production software and just started learning it. And that was how bad I wanted it. And same with wrestling. I was sitting there unsure if I was ever going to wrestle again. and that was super depressing. But it made me appreciate and love wrestling even more, because when I got healthy again and was able to come back to wrestling, there was like a reinvigorated passion for it. Just thankful that I was getting to do it again when I wasn't sure if I would. So, yeah, I'm thankful that I'm healthy today, and cancer-free.
Well, looking to the future, you spent several years with this company and have seen a lot of change during that time. How confident are you in the future of Impact Wrestling, and have you or other wrestlers been impacted by some of the negative rumors about the company's television deal?
I think what sucks is that fans seem to be very concerned with these inner workings of TNA when there's a great show that we're putting out every Wednesday, and it seems sometimes that's like taking a back seat to the controversy and the negative reports out there. It's like, don't worry about that. Just watch the show and enjoy that. I mean, wrestling's interesting. It's not like passionate fans of TV shows like The Walking Dead are super concerned about the behind-the-scenes workings of that show, but only in pro wrestling where you get fans that are so interested in the behind-the-scenes aspect just as much as the stuff you see on television. So it's interesting in that way, but yeah, it just sucks that I think the show's really strong right now, and you got a lot of hungry wrestlers that are giving their all every week, and I just think there should be more emphasis put on that and less on the behind-the-scenes stuff.
Mike Chiari?
Well, TNA has undergone a lot of changes recently, and I think that one of the biggest seems to be that much of the talent is permitted to take independent bookings around the scheduled tapings. Like you yourself, you've worked some shows for AIW, I know. What do you think that type of flexibility says about TNA, and how do you think that it might impact outside talent's interest in working for the company?
I think it's cool that, we have the freedom to take these bookings when we're not doing TNA stuff. It's just a different situation. Last year, we were super busy with live events, and I barely had time to do any independent shows. This year, there aren't live events, so I've got more freedom to take the independent bookings, and it's cool because there's like a different kind of pressure and creative outlet to me personally when I wrestle at an independent show versus a TNA television show, and getting to wrestle like talent that I'm not familiar with, and just kind of seeing like the indie trends that are going on in different places. It's cool. It like kind of keeps your mind sharp, I think. So I enjoy wrestling the independents, and it's cool to see other parts of the world, like being able to do more independent bookings. I got to do some indie stuff in England, Japan, and Mexico, and Russia. Actually, going back to Russia in September. So it's like it's cool in a way. You get to see the world, you get to meet new people, have different experiences. But at the same time, yeah, I do wish there were more TNA live events, and hopefully we'll get back to that point at somewhere down the line.
BG?
You became one of my favorites in TNA shortly after you made your debut, and one of the biggest reasons is because of your finisher, Submission Impossible. How did you create the move, and have you ever seriously injured somebody performing it?
I've never injured anyone performing the move. It is like a legitimate MMA submission. And it came from this period in my life where I was trying to find some way to set myself apart. I think the story of I started training to be a wrestler when I was a teenager, and I've been hustling the independents looking for my big break. I feel like we've heard that story 1,000 times. And I used to think that was an interesting story until I realized, oh my God, everybody has this story. There's nothing interesting about me at all in a pro wrestling context. So I started thinking of different ways to set myself apart. And one of these terrible ideas that I had to set myself apart was to try to be a real shooter. So I went to a combat submission wrestling school for a month. It's like an MMA style, catch wrestling, whatever. I was like, yeah, there's no more legitimate shooters anymore. Maybe I'll be a shooter. So I went to took classes at combat submission wrestling in Maryland, and I learned the submission move there, which it's a variation, but yeah, it's from Submission Impossible, and that's the story of how it came about. But as far as finding something to fit myself out with, it obviously wasn't mixed martial arts, but it did end up being DJing, so it's interesting.
Well, a huge part of wrestling is paying your dues, and you have done that in both Japan, Mexico, the indie scene in America, and like you said, internationally. What did working in other countries teach you about the business, and how do you think that experience has impacted your career?
I think my experiences personally just give me a really unique background in a wrestling context that a lot of guys don't have. I feel confident wrestling anybody of any style. If they're a luchador who don't speak any English at all, I can have a match with them and still bring out their best. If you're Japanese, don't understand American style, hey, maybe you don't speak English either, I can hang with you. Like, I have confidence wrestling anybody regardless of language barriers and different training philosophies or whatever. So I think that's where it came in handy for me. It just made me versatile. But it was huge. It was huge for me as a wrestler. Like, I'm very fortunate that I was given these opportunities because they really did shape me in a lot of ways and made me have a respect for people that come up in different countries, because wrestling school in America, like, you go to these like independent wrestling schools here, man, and the training a lot of times isn't really that difficult. So it produces a lot of like guys who probably shouldn't be in wrestling. It produces them and gives them a chance to be in wrestling, which is great, but it also kind of like kills the credibility when you go to a wrestling show, an independent wrestling show anyway. But you go to Mexico and train, and it's like going to boot camp. The training's insane. Like, if American independent wrestlers were put through Lucha Libre training, half of them would have never have made it to begin with. So it's like all the guys that are luchadors, I have a ton of respect for them. And then the Japanese training, it's well documented how intense that is. Same thing. If Americans had to go through that training, it would have weeded out a lot of people. But yeah, I have a lot of respect for those guys and how they came up. And yeah, I'm thankful for the opportunities that I've had.
Mike Chiari?
You had a chance to work pretty extensively with Rob Van Dam in a program for the X Division title back in 2012 and 2013. And I thought you guys put on a lot of entertaining matches against each other, some of my favorite matches that you've had. Where would you say that ranks for you in terms of your career accomplishments? And also, what were you able to learn from that feud that made you a better performer moving forward?
It's interesting you mentioned that. I often tell people that I've learned more from Rob Van Dam than I have from anybody. Like, invaluable experience as far as learning more about wrestling and how to put on better matches. I wrestled him not just on television and at Bound for Glory 2012. I wrestled him on all of the live events for about 4 months. So every weekend I was wrestling him two or three times and just soaking up knowledge each time. Unbelievable experience, unbelievable guy. My personal accomplishment as far as wrestling him that I'm proud of was at Bound for Glory 2012. It was the first time we had ever wrestled at all, and at that point he was the biggest star that I've ever wrestled, and it was live on pay-per-view opening the show. Like, that's a pretty nerve-wracking situation for a young wrestler, because I was 25 years old and had only been doing television with TNA for a year, and half of that year I was not really used. So it was a big opportunity for me, and I put a lot of pressure on myself to try my best and hang with Van Dam. The best compliment was after the match. He came up to me and said, "Man, that felt like we've done it 100 times." So that meant a lot to me to get that compliment from Van Dam after the first time we ever wrestled. And we went on to have a lot of other really cool matches, and yeah, he's the best.
Brandon Gavin, final question?
I always thought Zima Ion was a really cool wrestling name. How did you create that name? What went into the decision to switch to DJZ? And do you think you'll switch your name back in the near future?
Dude, hilarious question. You're actually the first guy that's ever told me, I think, that DJZ, or not DJZ, but Zima Ion, rather, was a good name. It's an interesting story. Let me give you a long-winded answer that you'll appreciate. Trust me. So bear with me. It's a long one. But I was wrestling on the independent scene as Shima Zion for many years. And Shima Zion was a name that I came up with when I was 16 years old. I was sitting in high school, like, imagining myself as a wrestler, trying to think of names that would be cool, and I thought of Shima Zion. At 16, I thought that was a cool name. There's a lot of things I thought were cool at 16 that I don't think are cool today. Kind of like the band Disturbed. Thought they were awesome when I was 16. Would never listen to them now. But anyway, I got stuck with the Shima Zion name for many years on the independents, and nobody told me to change it. They said it was unique, but my problem was difficult to market. Nobody knows how to pronounce it. Nobody knows how to spell it. Constantly getting people misspelling, mispronouncing the name. I wanted to get rid of it so bad. I looked at my TNA opportunity as my chance to finally get rid of the name. I'm like, surely they're not going to let me be Shima Zion on the television show, so I'll most likely get to pick a new name. Sure enough, the night before my debut match at TNA, D'Lo Brown, who was an agent, he told me, try to think of a good name for tomorrow, something different than Shima Zion. I stayed up nearly all night writing down a bunch of different ideas. There were some real gems in there. Kobali Cruz, probably the best name in there. I could have called my finisher Cruise Control. But I had this list of names, right? The next day, the day of my debut match, I get to TV, and I go up to Vince Russo. And I said, hey, man, I made a list of names. He's like, oh, I already got a name. You're Shima Zion, right? I'm like, yeah. He's like, Zima Ion. So you basically have the same name. Wow. Wow. This
They would have been a great
interesting.
marketing opportunity for Zima, the malt beverage, if it still was in
Yeah, if it
existence.
still existed. But I don't know if I want to be sponsored by a girly malt beverage. But anyway, it was my first day at TNA. What am I going to do? Say no to this name that they gave me? It's like, now I'm just going to make the best of it. So Zima Ion ended up being my name. The ironic part was there was a backstage promo that I did before my debut match on Spike that night, and I mispronounced the name Zima Ion. So that was the craziest part to me, is things have come full circle. After years of people mispronouncing and misspelling my name, I make my national television debut, and I mispronounce my own name.
That's awesome.
So full circle right there. But yeah, DJZ was my chance to finally change my name and have something that's easier to pronounce, easier to spell, easier to digest. I'm like, I don't want to be DJ Zima Ion. That's too much. Just DJZ. No one's going to mess that up.
That's fair. That's fair. A huge thanks to TNA star DJZ for coming on the show. Catch him stealing the show on Impact Wrestling every Wednesday on Destination America. Tell the fans where they can support you, man.
Yeah, follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Twitter at Zema, TNA, ZEMA, and Instagram. Instagram at DatDJ, though. DATDJTHO. Thank you all for having me.
Appreciate the time, man. Good luck moving forward. We really appreciate it.
Cool. Thanks, guys. Take care.